Jake Turner, a decorated Navy SEAL, had faced ambushes in dusty deserts, storms in open seas, and explosions that could tear the earth apart. But the sight before him that evening unsettled him in a way the battlefield never had. He had just returned from his final deployment, a 6-month covert mission overseas, and the peaceful silence of his coastal Virginia town was supposed to be his reward. As he drove his black Ford F-150 into his driveway, his shoulders finally relaxed for the first time in months. The rhythmic hum of cicadas filled the air, and the salty ocean breeze whispered through the trees. He turned off the ignition, ready to step into the comfort of his home. That's when he saw it. A large German shepherd sitting perfectly still in his driveway, its amber eyes locked on him with unnerving focus. The dog didn't bark, didn't growl, didn't flinch. It simply sat there, chest high, ears pricked, tail still, as though carved from stone. Jake's instincts kicked in instantly. He scanned the street for an owner, a leash, anything. But the houses around him were quiet, blinds drawn, and the air eerily still. Slowly, he stepped out of the truck, hands relaxed at his sides, but his body tense and ready. "Hey, buddy," he said softly, crouching slightly to make himself less threatening. "You lost." The shepherd didn't move. Its ears twitched at his voice, but it stayed rooted to the ground, eyes flicking briefly toward the passenger side of his truck before returning to him. Then, without warning, it gave a low, almost mournful whine, deliberate, controlled, not the sound of an ordinary stray. Jake's pulse quickened. This wasn't random. This was trained behavior. He'd spent years alongside military K-9s south. He knew the signs. The dog circled to the passenger side of the truck, sat down again, and pressed its body close to the door as though guarding it. Jake's brows furrowed as he cautiously followed. There were no tags, no harness, but everything about its posture screamed professional. His mind began to race. Where had it come from? Why was it so fixated on his truck? Something wasn't adding up. Taking a deep breath, Jake crouched beside the passenger door, running his hand along the frame before cautiously opening it. Everything inside looked normal, glove compartment intact, no sign of tampering, but as he leaned lower, his sharp eyes caught something wedged deep beneath the seat, almost hidden from view. He reached under, fingers brushing against cold metal, and carefully pulled out a small black military-grade encrypted drive, the kind used only for classified intel. His chest tightened. How had this ended up under his seat? He'd just come back from deployment. His vehicle had been parked at the base for months. The K-9 gave a sharp bark, startling him. At that exact moment, Jake's senses screamed danger. In the distance, faint footsteps echoed, fast and deliberate, coming straight toward his driveway. Whoever they were coming for the same thing he'd just found, and they weren't going to knock politely. Jake quickly shoved the encrypted device into his jacket pocket and scanned the shadows around his driveway. His training screamed at him to stay calm but alert. The K-9 growled softly, low and guttural, crouching slightly as its ears pinned back, clearly sensing danger before he could even see it. Seconds later, 2 figures emerged from the dark alley. Beside his neighbor's house, dressed head to toe in black tactical gear, their movements sharp and purposeful. These weren't curious neighbors or random thieves. These were trained operatives. One of them called out, his voice cold and commanding, "Turner, hand over the drive." Jake's stomach dropped. They knew his name. That confirmed it. This wasn't some coincidence. This was connected to his last mission. His hand instinctively brushed the grip of his concealed sidearm, but he didn't draw it yet. He needed information. "Who sent you?" he called back firmly, his voice steady despite his racing heart. The second man raised his weapon, aiming it straight at Jake. "That's classified," he said flatly. "Give us the drive, and nobody gets hurt." The canine bared its teeth, letting out a warning snarl as Jake slowly took a step back, positioning himself so the truck gave him partial cover. He wasn't about to hand over classified intel without answers. "I don't know what you think I have," Jake lied coolly, keeping his tone casual even though adrenaline pumped through his veins. The operative tightened his grip on the weapon, his finger inching closer to the trigger. The canine reacted instantly, leaping forward with a deep, vicious bark, snapping its jaws inches from the man's arm. Startled, he fired a shot, the bullet ricocheting off the truck's frame. Jake dropped to the ground, rolling behind his vehicle for cover, and in one swift motion, he drew his weapon and returned fire. The first operative lunged forward, but Jake caught him with a precise strike to the wrist, disarming him effortlessly before slamming him to the ground. Meanwhile, the canine launched itself at the second man, knocking him off balance and clamping its powerful jaws onto his arm, forcing him to drop his rifle. The man screamed, trying to shake the dog off, but its grip was unyielding. Within seconds, the fight was over. One man was unconscious, the other retreating into the darkness, clutching his injured arm and swearing as he fled. Jake panted, keeping his weapon trained on the shadows until silence reclaimed the night. The canine returned to his side, breathing heavily but unharmed, its intelligent eyes locked on him as though waiting for instructions. Jake holstered his weapon, still trying to process what had just happened. Someone had planted a classified device under his seat. Someone had sent operatives to retrieve it. And this mysterious canine, highly trained, highly intelligent, had somehow known. As he glanced at the drive in his pocket, a single thought burned in his mind. Whatever was on this device was dangerous enough to kill for, and he had just become part of something much bigger than himself. Jake sat in his living room with the encrypted device clutched tightly in his hand, the dim glow of a single lamp casting long shadows across the walls. The German Shepherd, the mysterious canine, sat beside him, breathing steadily, its amber eyes sharp and alert even in stillness. Every few seconds, its ears twitched at faint sounds outside, a living alarm system honed by training Jake could only assume was military grade. He'd given the dog some water and a bit of leftover steak, and though it accepted the food, its gaze never softened. It wasn't here for companionship, it was here for a reason. Jake leaned back, running a hand through his short sand-brown hair, replaying the attack in his mind. Those men weren't random criminals. They knew his name, his background, and exactly what they were after. That meant someone had orchestrated this, someone with resources, someone who knew more about his last mission than even he did. He looked down at the drive, its matte black surface, smooth and unmarked. Military-grade encryption he'd seen. Drives like this before, used only in high-level operations where secrecy was everything. The kind of device that could hold information worth millions, or worth killing for. He needed answers, and there was only one person he trusted enough to call Commander Nathan Briggs. His former CO, Jake grabbed his secure satellite phone from the drawer and dialed a code he hadn't used in over a year. After 3 rings, a gravelly voice came through. "Turner, thought you were retired." Jake didn't waste time. "Sir, I found something under my truck seat." A classified drive. Someone planted it while I was overseas. 2 armed operatives came for it tonight. There was a pause on the other end. Then Briggs spoke slowly, carefully, as though weighing every word. Describe the drive. Jake gave. The specs, and Briggs cursed under his breath. Damn it, Turner. You've stumbled into something way above your clearance. That device contains intel from Operation Valkyrie. Jake frowned. I thought Valkyrie was shut down. It was, Briggs replied sharply, but not before some very dangerous people went rogue. That drive contains proof, names, locations, accounts, everything. If it falls into the wrong hands, hundreds of lives could be at risk. Jake glanced at the canine, who had shifted slightly, watching him intently, and the dog. It led me to it. This wasn't random. There was silence on the line, then Briggs spoke, softer this time. Turner, that shadow. He belonged to Sam Carter. Jake's chest tightened at the name. Sam Carter had been his closest friend in the SEALs, a man he trusted with his life, until Sam didn't make it back from their last mission. Briggs continued, Shadow's been missing since Carter's death. If he found you, it's because Sam wanted you to find that drive. Jake swallowed hard. Memories of Sam flashing like lightning, the firefight in the desert, the explosion, the radio silence. He'd always believed Sam's death was an accident, but now doubt gnawed at him. Why me? Jake whispered. Briggs hesitated before answering. Because you're the last man Sam trusted. If Shadow found you, he knows you're the only one who can finish this. Suddenly, the sound of shattering glass erupted from the back of the house. Jake's instincts flared like a live wire. He grabbed his weapon, signaling to Shadow, who immediately crouched low, growling deep in his throat. Heavy footsteps pounded across his kitchen tiles. More operatives. They weren't giving up. Jake and Shadow moved as one, silent, precise, lethal. The fight was brutal and fast. Shadow lunged at the first intruder, his teeth tearing into fabric and flesh as the man screamed. Jake fired a clean shot, dropping the second operative before he could raise his weapon. Within minutes, silence reclaimed the house, broken only by Shadow's ragged breathing and Jake's racing heartbeat. He wiped the sweat from his brow, staring at the bodies sprawled across his floor. Whoever was behind this wasn't going to stop, and now they knew exactly where he lived. Jake looked down at Shadow, who met his gaze steadily, unafraid. Looks like it's you and me now, buddy, Jake muttered. The canine gave a soft, almost approving huff, grabbing the drive and his go bag. Jake knew there was no turning back. If Operation Valkyrie had put him in their crosshairs, the only way to survive was to expose the truth, no matter the cost. Jake drove through the night. Shadow curled up in the passenger seat, the black drive lying on the dashboard like a ticking time bomb. Every mile he put between himself and his home felt like one step deeper into enemy territory. He couldn't trust anyone, not the local police, not even some branches of the military. Briggs had warned him that Valkyrie had enemies on the inside, people embedded so deep they could orchestrate hits without leaving a trace. His only option was to reach a secure base 2 states away, where Briggs promised him answers and protection. But as dawn broke, Jake spotted a black SUV in his rearview mirror, following too closely to be a coincidence. We've got company, he muttered, glancing at Shadow. The dog raised his head, ears alert, sensing the tension immediately. Without warning, the SUV accelerated, trying to ram his truck off the road. Jake gritted his teeth. Jerking the wheel sharply to the right, and sending the F-150 barreling down an unmarked dirt road. Dust exploded behind him as the SUV gave chase. "Hold on, buddy," Jake growled, flooring the gas pedal. The road twisted. Through dense woods, branches slapping against the truck, tires screeching as he fought for control. Shadow barked furiously as bullets shattered the rear windshield, glass spraying across the cab. Jake ducked low, swerving hard until, finally, the SUV clipped a tree and flipped violently, disappearing in a plume of smoke. Breathing hard, Jake kept driving until the road opened into a clearing. He stopped the truck, chest heaving, adrenaline roaring in his ears. Shadow whined softly, nudging his hand as if to remind him they weren't safe yet. Hours later, they reached the secure base Briggs had directed him to, a hidden facility buried beneath a mountain. Armed guards greeted him, immediately taking him and the drive to a secure operations room. Briggs was already there, his grizzled face grim. "You made it," he said, eyeing Shadow with a nod of recognition. "Good dog." Without wasting time, Briggs plugged the drive into an isolated system. Files opened on the screen: names, accounts, offshore transfers, and mission logs revealing a massive network of corruption within Valkyrie. High-ranking officials had secretly sold classified intel to foreign buyers, framing loyal soldiers like Sam Carter as traitors to cover their tracks. Jake clenched his fists as anger surged through him. Sam hadn't died in an accident. He'd been betrayed, and Shadow, somehow, had survived the chaos and carried his last hope straight to Jake. Briggs placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. "With this evidence, we can dismantle Valkyrie's rogue cell, but you need to decide, Turner. Once this goes public, there's no going back." Jake looked down at Shadow, who met his gaze steadily, as if waiting for his choice. "Sam didn't die for nothing," Jake said quietly. "We finish what he started." Within hours, secrets were exposed. Arrests swept through the ranks. Names once untouchable dragged into the light. The operatives who had hunted Jake vanished into custody, and Sam Carter's name was cleared at last. In the aftermath, Jake stood outside the base, the morning sun warming his face. Shadow sat beside him, tail thumping softly against the ground. "Guess it's just you and me now, partner," Jake said, scratching behind the canine's ears. The dog gave a low, contented rumble, leaning into his hand. They had survived the storm together, but Jake knew this was only the beginning. Somewhere, out there, more shadows waited, and with Shadow at his side, he was ready. If this story gripped you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Canine Era for more incredible canine stories of loyalty, bravery, and mystery.